Hello and welcome to another bonus episode of Reporting Depp v. Heard. I have had a little more time to get some remote park bench interviews together, and I've also been acutely aware that I've been recording interviews with a lot of people who were very much pro Johnny Depp. So I had the opportunity to record an interview with Dr. Charlotte Proudman, who is a barrister and a fellow of Queen's College, Cambridge in the UK. She wrote an article in a British newspaper saying that Johnny Depp was clearly an abuser and that she was also present, although not working on the same case, in the 2020 trial in the UK. She has very strong views, and so it was very good to have a wide-ranging conversation with her over the course of around half an hour, which you can see very shortly. I will be back at the end just to essentially say goodbye and plug my newsletter. Bet you can't wait for that. But in the meantime, please do enjoy a half-hour ramble with Dr. Charlotte Proudman and her take on Depp v. Heard. Well, I'm delighted to be joined by Dr. Charlotte Proudman, a barrister and an expert in violence against women and girls, and a fellow at Queen's College in Cambridge. Dr. Proudman, thank you very much indeed for coming on. Your article in the Independent about the Johnny Depp trial caused something of a stir. I don't know whether you're aware of social media, how much social media you take on board. What was the response to it immediately after its publication?
Quite a mixed response. There was a lot of positivity. In fact, I would say as soon as I received a positive response, such as emails often from survivors or a positive comment, I'd instantly get something very negative sent straight back to me. Very vitriolic, nasty, misogynist, vile comments. So it was a very sort of polarized response from one side to the other.
What's your view of what is going on in the online world surrounding this trial? Because I think there is an established acceptance that Johnny Depp and his supporters have seized the narrative in social media, and traditional media are taking its cues from there. They are seeing that there appears to be a huge groundswell of support in America and around the world for Johnny Depp, and that this is taking control of where the narrative is going, and therefore that's serving his purposes. That's essentially what he fought to do, to get this trial heard in public, so that he could, in his words, tell his side of the story.
Yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it, how social media seems to have influenced mainstream newspapers and media outlets. And, there's definitely an enormous swell on social media, which is highly supportive of Johnny Depp. And I do wonder how many of these accounts, and I'm talking about thousands of accounts, are actually genuine, real people, or whether they are bots. Because
Why do you say that?
Because I look at some of the accounts, and they have his name as a handle, they have his photograph, and the entirety of their comments, their likes, etc., it's just on Johnny Depp, and they're clearly just targeting anyone that mentions Depp, Johnny, Heard, Amber in different ways in which they're writing that, or even trial, and then they're targeting anyone that comments positively in support of Amber Heard.
Well, I've spent a lot of time at the trial, and in doing that have met a lot of the social media influencers, many of whom are queuing up from the early hours to get into court. They go and make their content, and many of the people who are very powerful on Twitter, I can promise you that they're very much not bots. And also a huge number, an overwhelming number of people who I've met who support Johnny Depp in person are women, particularly women who've been abused. And they say they see Amber Heard, the patterns of abuse that they saw in their abuser as well. And this is their lived reality. So they see Amber Heard as a fantasist and a liar. And they want to use this trial as an opportunity to not just call her out as they see it, but also to call out any other women who might be attempted to try and manipulate the system, or manipulate a relationship, or manipulate the legal process by faking what happened to them in their relationship.
Well, I think that's a very dangerous, warped approach to take to this particular case, because Johnny Depp was found to be an abuser of Amber Heard in a High Court trial that took place in London. Very serious allegations that were made by Amber Heard, and the vast majority of them proved following a very lengthy High Court trial. And I remember actually being at the High Court during that trial. I was doing a completely different case, but I saw him pretty much every day, and we walked past each other, we walked through security together. he would smile, and he would see his fans outside of court waiting all day with banners, blowing kisses at him, throwing roses at him. And you're right, many of those were women. But, you know, just because they are women, it doesn't necessarily, I think, send out a strong message that there isn't a swell of support also for Amber Heard. There are lots of victims of domestic abuse, perhaps more of the silent majority, that are looking at this, that see themselves in Amber Heard and feel that they have been silenced, and they see the memes, the laughter, the jokes that are made about Amber Heard when she's giving evidence. And I think as a result of that, many will be worried and scared about coming forward. And that's my concern, the repercussions and reverberations that this is going to have on other victims of domestic abuse and potentially other trials in the future, not just including vulnerable, marginalized women, you know, who I represent, but also those that are in relationships with rich and powerful individuals that are worried they're going to be held up to this very high standard and scrutinized in this very misogynistic, visceral, graphic, intimate way, where every part of her body is objectified and every single move she makes is watched under a microscope.
There's a lot to unpack in that answer. I'll try a couple of areas. Are you not denying the lived experience then of the women who say, look, I've been in an abusive relationship. I've stood in the queue with people who've shown me photos of what their partner has done to them. And they say nothing in what Amber Heard is saying rings true. Well, let's just address that particular area first, because you're essentially just dismissing that, are you?
I am dismissing that. I think that if that's their opinion, of course, they're entitled to have that opinion. I don't agree with it. So I dismiss it to that extent, that I don't agree with that opinion.
And what is it that you don't agree? Do you disagree with they can understand what they see in Amber Heard as reflecting what they experienced in their relationship, or are you just dismissing what they're saying?
I think that Amber Heard is a victim of domestic abuse, and it's not just me that thinks that. A High Court judge thinks that, who did over 100-page judgment along with the Court of Appeal that dismissed his appeal. Why are they disagreeing with a High Court judge and a Court of Appeal judges?
Well, because they say it's just one man's opinion who made a decision on the balance of probabilities.
Opinion, is it? It's not just one man's opinion.
I'm saying what they said. What they said.
But there are Court of Appeal, which there are more than one judge is sitting.
You know what the appeal. You know that appeal was doomed to fail as much as I do, because it was an appeal essentially on the facts. And but the High Court judge is the guy who makes the.
I have won appeals on the facts. I've won many of them, a leading barrister when it comes to gender-based violence, and I've represented many victims that have overturned.
Sure, but Johnny Depp was trying to appeal on the basis that Amber Heard hadn't donated money to charity, and that was never going to get overturned. I mean, it was Justice Nichol who made the decision on the facts essentially, and his view, without any concrete evidence, was that there was enough circumstantial evidence that on the balance of probabilities that 12 out of the 14 acts of violence did happen.
I agree with that, by the way. There's no concrete evidence. There is concrete evidence. There's her evidence. Every time somebody says that, well, there's no evidence.
Sorry, documentary evidence.
Are we suggesting that her verbal evidence is not enough? Because if we are seriously saying this, then what we are saying to rape complainants is, don't bother reporting because nobody is going to believe you unless you have third-party evidence. Are we really seriously suggesting that a woman could only report rape, sexual abuse, domestic abuse if there are 3 male witnesses? Are we going that far? If she has the perfect GP record, the perfect hospital record, and that wouldn't be enough, because the evidence has got absolutely nothing to do with this case. It says something more about the deeply entrenched misogyny in our society. That's what it's really about.
Obviously, the vast majority of domestic violence takes place behind closed doors with no witnesses, and a very small likelihood of.
Nichols said,
yeah, of course, no, and I take that ball. But the judge in this case clearly felt that there was enough of a case to suggest that there was some doubt as to Justice Nichols' decision in order to allow this one to go ahead in the United States. It wouldn't have got off the ground unless she felt that Johnny Depp had a case. And Johnny Depp's case is that he never laid a finger on Amber Heard. She is completely making all this up. And that's on the basis on which he was allowed to let this case go ahead. Given we are where we are, and you can imagine how the American media will spend no time dismissing the decisions of a single English judge if the verdict goes in Johnny Depp's favour. What do you see about the way this has gone? I know we've had the vast majority of Johnny Depp's evidence, and of course, you would be expecting Amber Heard to have a number of witnesses who are in a position to at least make a strong case for her. But I've spoken to attorneys, very learned people over here in the States, who say that the reverberations from this trial will echo throughout American culture for decades to come.
No, I think that's right. It absolutely will. I think really, regardless of which way it goes, whether they find in Amber Heard's favour and they find the allegations proved, or they go in Johnny Depp's favour, I think that ultimately the trial has come down to social media and to the reports that are in the press, which is largely favourable to Johnny Depp. And if you look, for example, at the fact that Amber Heard was found to be a victim in the High Court in London, I hear what you say about that. But regardless of the decision that was made, it's put to one side. And then there is a lot of minimization around that judgment. While it was just a single judge that made that decision, it's on the balance of probabilities, all these types of minimization arguments to suggest that that decision is somehow not credible, and the legitimacy of it is undermined. And the same thing would happen, I think, in this trial, if indeed a similar decision was made and Amber Heard was found to be a victim. People just won't believe it. They won't rely upon it. So what is the point then in going through the legal system if ultimately people are going to judge it on their own decision, their own opinions, and on the basis of what's written on social media? It just effectively becomes a show trial. And the question is, do you believe in the justice system? Do you believe in the integrity of it? Are you willing to put your faith in it? Clearly, Amber Heard has, in the sense that she's countersued, as it seems, for $100 million on the basis of the harm that she says that she has suffered. But it's going to have an enormous impact, I think, upon the way in which victims of domestic abuse are treated within the legal system, believe that they're going to be treated after watching this play out in the public eye.
Yeah, I mean, there are all sorts of questions about the weaknesses of the legal system for deciding situations like this, but it comes back to the case that it's about the only thing that we've got. I mean, Johnny Depp took this legal action, he says, because it was the only way that he had of clearing his name, and rather than, as many other people have said, because it's another way of gaslighting and continuing to victimize his victim.
Wow.
I mean, it
have to, just on that point, I mean, in my view, going through a second trial is a form of post-separation coercive and controlling behaviour. He's not accepting the decision.
But how else does he get to clear his name as if he believes he's innocent?
Well, he's clearly been found not to be innocent, hasn't he? And he hasn't done any rehabilitation, any form of reform. What are we going to do? Just have forum shopping? Just go to a different jurisdiction and have another case? What is he going to do if he loses this case? Is there going to be another trial in a different
his
jurisdiction?
Point that the judge accepted, because of course Amber Heard's legal team tried to make this point, but his point, as the judge accepted, was that Amber Heard was not the defendant in the first trial, and therefore he wasn't able to get the same level of disclosure and discovery.
She was the key witness, wasn't she, in the first trial in London? So she was the one that had to give witness for a significantly long period of time, no doubt experiencing re-victimization, re-traumatization, a lot of triggering. It's said that she suffers with PTS as well. And then having to go through a second trial with the media, the whole world judging her as a result of that, as well as also suing her for $50 million, screams out to me, and no doubt to many other people, as an opinion that it could look like a form of financial control. Sure. Of course, we have to wait to see the outcome, but that's how it appears.
But what fascinates me is that you are absolutely convinced he is an abuser. There are many, many hundreds of women who are absolutely convinced he isn't an abuser, and no one really knows because we weren't there. We weren't behind closed doors.
But you could say that
this is the thing.
In every single rape and domestic abuse case, and that's the point. But we don't say it when it comes to terrorism. We don't say when it comes to mugging or theft. We don't say, oh, well, we were not there, so we're not quite sure what happened. We accept what a complainant often says, don't we? It's scrutinized to an extent, but not to the extent that gender-based violence is, because there's this perception that a woman is likely to lie. And yet the evidence shows, and it's only around in 3% of cases, that women lie about rape for a whole variety of reasons, including
and the point that everyone is
health.
making here, that this is one of those 3% cases, that Amber Heard is being manipulative, Amber Heard is making things up, she's a fantasist, she's acting on the stand, and that this needs, and this on the basis of what people say they've been looking at. And you know, there are people who have gone into far more evidence and seen far more detail of this than the jury in this case ever will, because of what's been published and made admissible by the parties and the judge. They have come to their conclusion, and they are outraged that people like you can call this from where you're sitting, when they say, no, we've done the research, we've lived this experience, we know what we're talking about, she's a liar.
Well, I find it outrageous that people want to go behind a decision of a High Court judge in London and appear to take no credence to that whatsoever, which shows that they don't clearly have any faith in the justice system. Otherwise, they'd accept that, wouldn't they? I mean, the kind of way in which they're picking it apart is fairly appalling. I don't accept that Amber Heard comes across someone who is manipulative or a liar in this way. And my concern is that the focus on her and these kind of gendered tropes and stereotypes means that he is rendered invisible. What about him? Why is he saying to her, why didn't you leave? If I was abusing you, you would have left. You know, these types of tropes are so dangerous. It takes women on average 7 times to leave an abusive relationship. And they will play out now as key themes that are put in domestic abuse trials. And we've almost moved backwards rather than forwards. And the same idea about her mental health as well. I see this play out in the vast majority of my cases. She's mentally ill, she's delusional, the problem is her, she's insane, she's mad. Whereas what about his mental health? You know, he was found to assault her in the High Court case when he was taking drugs or he was on alcohol, and he referred to himself as the monster. And yet people are not asking questions about him.
Well, that's because she brought her mental health into play. She brought her mental health into play during this case, whereas he's never brought it into play. So once she'd opened the door suggesting that she had PTSD as a result of their relationship, it allowed his team to insist that she was examined independently. Whereas because he's never brought his mental health into play in all of this, he isn't being forensically examined. That's my understanding of why that's the case, why she's been assessed and why he hasn't been assessed.
Yeah, and unsurprisingly, she's assessed as apparently having some form of personality disorder, histrionic or other, which is a highly gendered way, isn't it, of framing women as being mad, unstable.
Well, that's what Johnny Depp's forensic psychologist said.
Even the term histrionic personality. I've actually seen psychologists diagnose women with this before in other cases. I have never seen a man diagnosed with a histrionic personality disorder. And for me, that says it all, doesn't it?
Well, one forensic psychologist for Johnny Depp came up with exactly the right or the same conclusion that Johnny Depp did about Amber Heard, and Amber Heard's forensic psychologist came up with exactly. Well, it makes me worry for the field of forensic psychology if you can have two opposingly diagnoses from about the same person. But let's just move on to one of the comments that was made about your article from Greg Ellis. Now, Greg Ellis is he wrote a book called The Respondent. He's a big supporter of Johnny Depp's, and he's takes the view that I'll read out the quote that he made about you, if I may. You're a member of the cartel of family law who makes a fortune from breaking up families. Now, don't respond to that directly. Respond, if you will, to a wider men's movement that has got behind this trial, because they have all got individual experiences of what they say is being manipulated by their former partners through the courts. And they say this as a potential test case for men's rights in proving that women shouldn't always be believed. Women shouldn't always have the upper hand in the legal system when it comes to things like custody and allegations of domestic violence, because women can be just as manipulative and devious as domestic violence abusers, and they can play the courts and they can play the system to their advantage. And this should finally show that for what it is, a sham.
I don't know who Greg Ellis is, first of all. I mean, it seems a fairly appalling, astonishing comment to make, frankly, about a professional. I mean, engage all you want with the cases that I've been involved in my changing the law, but certainly don't make it personal, because then you just lose the argument altogether. I think you're absolutely right, though, that this case has been upheld by men's rights activists as the case. And for me, that sort of shows the fact that it represents the ingrained misogyny in our society very, very deeply.
How?
The fact,
How?
well, it shows, doesn't it, the empathy that we feel towards men that we associate with, that we've seen on our TV screens, we've seen on our films, we've grown to love and to like, to want to even be them, to emulate them. And if they can be abusers, it can effectively be anyone.
But that's not their perspective. Their perspective is that they are broken men who've been abused by the system.
That's my view of how it's playing out. And a lot of the men that you're describing are those men that I identifying with him and looking at him as someone that could be broken down, but he has the money and power to be able to fight back, to bring these cases. So in a way, other men are identifying with him, thinking, I wish I could do that.
I don't necessarily think that's their point, and I've spoken to a number of them about this and interviewed a number of them about this. They have all suffered individually through what they see as manipulative spouses lying in court in order to either get custody of their children.
It's not even true. Where's the evidence?
Why would you deny their? Why would you again deny their lived experience?
You show me where the evidence of this is, because I represent victims in the family courts, and I haven't seen any of these manipulative women that have lied about domestic abuse allegations. In the vast majority of my cases, the allegations are found true. I represented Kate Griffiths, who's a member of Parliament. She was found to have been raped in her sleep by another member of Parliament, who told her that she wouldn't be believed because he was an MP, he was in a powerful position, and she wouldn't be able to hold him accountable, along with coercive and controlling behaviour and domestic abuse. The vast majority of cases, these women are telling the truth, 97% of them, and yet findings are not made in 97% of those cases. So what you are seeing, in my opinion, is perpetrators of domestic abuse that are playing the card as if they are the victims, because they're unable to acknowledge their own abusive behaviour. And so as a result of that, they're saying, I'm a victim of the system, rather than recognising the harm that they have caused and working to rehabilitate themselves. And because of that, they'll always be very dangerous individuals, I'm afraid.
So when you hear audio recording of Amber Heard allegedly taunting Johnny Depp, saying, oh yeah, you go to the media, you tell them you're an abused man, see how many people believe you. What do you conclude when you hear that?
Well, I don't want to comment on that at the moment, because obviously it's going through this trial. We'll have to wait and see what the outcome is as a result of that. But equally, I could say to you, well, what do you think to the photographs that we see of her where she's been physically harmed and she has injuries to her body, or text messages allegedly, or found as in the High Court judgment, saying that he wants to burn her corpse and fuck it. So, I can equally throw that out to you. And we're not here as judge or jury, are we? We're here to look at,
No, we're not. We're not. But
I tell you what, we were.
Well, I tell you what, I mean, over in the States, we have jury watchers, people who will sit there and take notes as to the jury's expressions, which of course, is anathema in the UK, as you well know. And I've one independent legal observer who showed me her notes, and they said, after hearing Amber Heard's graphic testimony last Thursday and then being shown the photographs, she said some of their faces looked visibly unimpressed because the descriptions that she was giving simply didn't match the injuries that they were seeing in the photographs. And as I think has been established, that Johnny Depp's flowery language that led to the text was a sort of riff on an idea from a Monty Python skit. There's all sorts of ways of responding to the evidence that we heard. What about responding
to his body language? Why is he smiling? Why has his lawyer got apparently his finger up to her while she's giving her evidence?
Well, I mean, I guess that's treating this as something of a joke, I guess, is his way of dealing with it. I mean, a lot of people say
it's not very funny, is it?
Well, no, it's not very funny. And actually, the humour element of this, I find it hilarious that Amber Heard's fans are saying this, that, and the other, and the humorous memes and the Mickey taking TikToks and things like that. Humor as a weapon to bully people, I find is a really interesting phenomenon. It's not just all out vitriol. It's that kind of like, oh yeah, we're all laughing along with Johnny Depp supporters online pointing out the inconsistencies in Amber Heard's evidence. That to me strikes me as a slightly new thing.
The humour.
What do you make of this? I mean, the jokes that we're seeing on TikTok, the Mickey takes of Amber Heard's testimony, and the cutting up of everything that we're seeing in court.
I mean, obviously, I can only speak in terms of seeing the court cases where, they're not put on trial in terms of the whole world watching them. But from what I see within these court cases, often, humour is used. I do often see perpetrators smirk at their victims, smile, even sometimes laugh. And in some cases, there have been no screens in place, and then I've been successful on appeal in saying that victims haven't been able to give their best evidence as a result of that, which is what we're seeing with Amber Heard. She's giving evidence looking at her allegedly abuser in the US, and of course found abuser
and he's laughing at her.
in England.
But his supporters would say that he's laughing at her because it is so ridiculous what she's saying, and you can't help yourself.
I think that's shameful. Where's the compassion? Where's the kindness? This woman is on trial, regardless of what he thinks he did or didn't do to her. This is a human being which is clearly struggling enormously and experiencing a lot of distress. And I didn't see her laughing at him. I mean, it's absolutely an appalling indictment. It really is, of humanity, that we've come this far, that we're laughing at complainants of sexual violence in court, and we think that that is acceptable. Is that really the standard of our society? Is that really how we're going to treat complainants of sexual assault?
Dr. Charlotte Proudman, thank you very much indeed for your time. A fascinating conversation. I really appreciate it. My thanks to Dr. Charlotte Proudman for that interview, which she gave me just before she had to dive into court in the UK. Very wide-ranging conversation. If you want to feed back on that, you're more than welcome to. The YouTube comments are a good way of doing so. There are many other ways of getting in touch with me as well. The best way is if you want to sign up to my newsletter. I do try and look after the people who have taken the time to donate by replying to them directly. All you have to do is go to reportingdeppvheard.net/newsletter, make a small donation, and you will be on board with daily newsletters whilst the remainder of the trial is sitting until it concludes. And obviously I'll include a newsletter when the verdict comes through as well. But also it's very easy to then reply to any emails that you get, and they go straight into my inbox as well. Or you can comment on the YouTube channel, or you can find me on Twitter, etc., etc. I do read every comment I get, even if I can't actually respond to everyone. Do like and subscribe this video. That helps as well. And just spread the word about Reporting Depp v. Heard. You can find us on your usual podcast provider as well. Same name. It should be very easy to find. So thank you very much for all your support. Thank you very much for watching or listening this far. And there is a definite possibility I'll squeeze out another bonus episode before trial starts sitting again on the 16th of May. We're currently enjoying a down week whilst the Chief Judge Penny Azkarate has to go to a conference, and then things reconvene at 9 o'clock on Monday the 16th for another 2 weeks. What larks. Thanks for sticking with us, and I'll see you soon.